So yeah, I feel like despite the fact that drawing is now a job, it's
Hmm.
literally my second full-time job. So it's just like it can feel tedious, especially when you're drawing things that you don't actively want to.
Yeah.
I love commissions, I really do. But a lot of the time, and I'm getting better with this now. Getting
Hmm.
better with like actively being. I can now now at a point where I can choose what I work on
Yeah.
and be able to send people to artists who I think would be a better fit. But sometimes it's like, oh, say for example, you commission me for a Kimberly piece. I wasn't
Hmm.
planning on doing a Kimberly piece until like way later in the year. But if you're going to pay me for it, of course, I'll do it sooner.
Yeah.
But because my brain was not thinking I was going to do Kimberly like now, it's a little bit harder to get to.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's the act of drawing is still fun for me. It's just the fact that I now that I get paid for it, now people have expectations, and now people want their stuff in a timely manner. It's just a bit more stressful in that way because it takes me longer to draw
Yeah.
because the quality has to be there. If someone's going to pay you real money, you got to give
Yeah.
them artwork. So that's the piece about it. That's a little bit more difficult.
And you know what, for the listeners, I know some people like it's so critical, like, okay, well, why artists charge so much for this? I'm like, y'all have no idea how much art supplies are. Like, like how much it takes. It's like it's not just the art piece, it's the time it takes for people to draw different things or draw the things that the way you want it, the right color and the right shape and everything else. Like do you get that critique sometimes as an artist, like, hey, this might be too much for a art piece, or do you see that in your everyday?
Um, More so since I've raised my prices.
Okay.
But well, that's not true. That's not true. Less so. It's about an equal half and half since raising prices.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you want to be busy and you want to always have something you're working on, yes, keep your prices lower. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. If you can pump out work like within a couple of hours and you don't mind having a bunch of people lined up waiting for stuff, because that's the truth. If your stuff is cheaper, people are going to be willing to pay for it. And that's
Yeah.
fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I take more time with my stuff. You're actively you're asking me to stop what I'm doing to work on this thing for you. That's
Yeah.
fine. I don't mind that. That's not a big deal, but you're going to have to pay appropriately for it. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, I do have a bachelor's degree in this. This is 20 years of me working on my craft, and you're going to get the accumulation of all that, and you will be charged appropriately. And a lot of people understand that. A lot of people get that entirely,
Yeah.
and other people don't. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It is. And I never complain about like art pieces being like a certain price, because I know, because I do personally know some artists that here in Columbia, South Carolina, that and if you go into their room, they just have a room full of art. They have like, the table set out, the pencils and the color and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is not cheap. Like,
Right.
buying this stuff is not cheap. And they have to, if they want to keep doing this, that, the price and the time and the effort it takes to draw, this is what it takes. So
Especially for traditional artists. So it's like it's one thing if it's like, oh, I'm doing digital art.
yeah,
Sure. For me, say for example, so I charge $350 for a full body, right? If
yeah,
this was going to be on paper, oh, it's double that,
yeah,
almost triple that. And it's not because I'm not confident in my ability as a traditional artist. That's not it at all.
yeah,
It's more so this is going to take a different brain for me to work on this.
yeah,
That's all it is. And this is genuinely one of the kind. I cannot print this off and sell it to other people. I
yeah.
could. I don't own a scanner, so I'm not going to scan it. I'm not going to worry about saving it as a print to do. Like for me, with traditional pieces, this is it.
Hmm.
I'm not making any copies of this. I'm not. If somebody were to ask me to draw the same characters, it's not going to be the same piece. It's going to be something
Yeah,
completely different. So that's, oh no, you charge out the wazoo for that
yeah,
personally, because it's just like it takes a completely different brain.
yeah.
you know. But that's also me. So
I feel like that's how a lot of artists feel. It's depends on what you do. Now, as far as artwork concerned, how do you feel about AI generated art pieces?
I think it had the opportunity to be something great, but
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, as with a lot of things that tech bros get their hands on, it ends up being this gross form of exploitation, quite
Yes.
honestly.
Yeah.
So I thought a lot of the stuff that people were making with it, like, oh, Super Mario World, if it was like an 80s fantasy movie
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff, I thought that was really cool because I thought it looked really neat, but I know that it was built off of very
Yeah.
terrible things. So it's like people were getting their work stolen. And the thing is, there's somebody out there who has done that before. They have taken that and they made a live action version of Super Mario World if it came out in the 80s, and it was a high fantasy
Right.
dark fantasy series. Somebody has done that before. Otherwise, those AI images would not exist. So you can find exactly what you're looking for, or there's somebody out there who is willing to do what you're looking for. But
Yeah.
even if you can't find it, bro, make it. Actually make it.
I do feel like with AI generated stuff, it takes away. It has an opportunity to take away from the actual artist that's out there, that's drawing stuff and going to Artist Alley and stuff. Because at any convention, I'll always be very, very careful on where I go to, because like if it's AI, I'm very less likely to actually purchase it. Like, I want something that someone actually created on their own, whether it's digital art or hand drawn stuff. Like I go to that more, because I know the negative space that it can create. Because I've been watching some artists frustration when it comes to AI, because and then they might see some of their art being AI generated and people are selling that.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
so scary. I can only imagine. Like, especially for the more popular artists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, if people, and the reality is of it all, it's like businesses don't care. If businesses want something that is close to your art, but they don't want to pay you, or they don't want to pay your prices or whatever, despite the fact that they're $1 million company or $1 billion company in some cases, they will feed your work into AI.
Yeah.
And then produce it. And I think that's disgusting, And people, the average consumer, not the general con goer, right? Because general convention attendees, they know the deal, right? They know how to shop. They know how to walk up and down every aisle. They know how to do that. But especially at more general interest conventions, just your average everyday person that doesn't really care about comics to that extent, and they don't really care about where they're getting the artwork from. They're just like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Not thinking to keep an eye out for the extra fingers or the wonky eyes or anything like that. Like, they don't think to keep an eye out for that stuff, because they operate in the real world. And the AI discourse, I feel like, is just so much an internet issue, is not a real world issue.
Yeah.
It can affect the real world, because we have people selling AI art at these shows and things like that. Don't get me wrong. It is very much a real world issue, but the severity of it, I feel like, is contained to online. Because I'm seeing people actively dealing with AI artists, like them getting kicked out of shows when people realize, oh, this is AI art, this shouldn't be here. You alert the convention staff and they get them kicked out. So it's an issue, but if people are vigilant, it's not going to continue to be as much of an issue as we are concerned about it being. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because that's mostly where I see the discourse is online, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter, whichever the case may be. But I thought I saw some AI generated art when I was at Animation. I wasn't 100% sure. I wasn't going to be out there. But what's funny though, to the listeners, I was sent to you, Ashley. Her name escapes me right now, but she had like a badass setup on how I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for some hand drawn art. She's like, oh, I know just the person.
That was
And
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that was my friend. She goes by Panda Gyoza,
yes, yes.
but I've known her. We met, excuse me, we met at the Art Institute in Virginia
Okay.
Beach. So we both graduated together, and I met her there. And she was the one who was like, "Hey, we don't know what we're going to be doing with our degrees. We both hate animating, right?
Yeah.
Let's try this instead." So we both. So she had already done a few conventions here and there, and her eye for detail is just immaculate.
Yeah.
So she had already started doing setups, and she was traveling for shows and stuff like that, and she was the one who convinced me to like really just start doing this for real.
Yeah.
So any and all success I have in conventions, I have to attribute to her, because it's like, if it wasn't for as much of a waste of time as the Art Institute was for me, I met everybody that I care about. a lot more people that I care about there. I met my boyfriend, I met her, I met several other people.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for going to AI, I would have never learned anything at all about vending at conventions. So